Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I want to show you my probably league startup for 3.12 question mark league, right? So the announcement of the new league is a couple of days away. I think like on the 1st of September, somewhere at this point. I think there is the announcement basically, and then it's probably another 3 weeks of waiting. As always, yeah, end of league, nobody has anything to do. League is boring, trade is dead, like that kind of stuff. But yeah, still, before I go into my quarterly Path of Exile break, I want to test out a build that I was thinking about to play for quite a long time, actually, since several leagues, actually. And it is a Blade Vortex Poison Assassin, which is not really any kind of surprise for being a good league starter or something like that. Neither it is a new or, what do you say, anything new built, right? Like Blade Vortex Poison is around since quite a long time. But I wanted to make it a little bit different than the rest, probably, with the typical self-poison type of build that I played, like, yeah, in 3.8, I think, with the 200 IQ poison build, with self-poisoning, turning that into chill, with self-chilling, converting the chill into reverse chill, basically, getting the max resistance with the Apex Supremacy, using the Devouring Diadem for Eldritch Battery and stuff like that. The current investment of this build is about, I would say, 10 to 15 exalts roughly at this point. And if you're wondering, this is not a league start if it's 10 exalts plus, for example. Might be for you in that regard, but I know personally from my experience in the past leagues, I usually get about, I would say, between 50 and 100 exalts in the first week of the league start, so I don't see a problem of getting this build together at the current state. Please note, there is no expensive, like hyper expensive items into this build, right? There is, my Watcher's Eye, for example, is like just unaffected by poison. There is no damage over time or double malevolence. Watcher's Eye, no expensive stuff over here. Thread of Hope. I mean, there are some parts of the build, which I'm going to explain a little bit later, where I say this is probably not league starter friendly. For example, the Devouring Diadem. Yes, it is about 15 or 20 chaos at the moment, like 65 days into the Harvest League, right? But usually these kind of items on League Start are expensive. And I'm talking about probably maybe 5 exalts or so. A 6-link Carcass Jack in League Start is probably around the 5, 6, 7 exalts mark as well. So basically those two items would actually bring me over 10 exalts, right? But don't forget, in the League Start, exalts are way cheaper than it is right now in Harvest League, for example, with like 150 chaos or so. So everything is like relative, right? The gearing choices are relative, the DPS is relative, survivability, and so on. So in this build, you can pretty much do everything what you want. And at the moment, I thought it's going to be a nice idea to go back to my 200 IQ poison build that I played as the Pathfinder last league, or at least like a couple leagues ago. And basically, why I say this is my potential league starter is usually I always play the builds that I am the most interested in at the end of a league, right? For example, 2 leagues ago or so, I was really looking forward to playing Pestilence Strike again because I really, really love poison builds. And guess what? In 3.10, the Pestilence Strike Pathfinder was my league start. Then in 3.10 in Harvest League, in the end of the league, I was playing a Poison, or at least a Bleed Bow Gladiator, and I had so much fun with this character, so I started the league with a Bleed Bow character in 3.11 Harvest League, and I would not wonder if I would start 3.12 with the Blade Vortex Poison, because I'm really, really enjoying this build. It's a lot of fun, it's super fast, and the gearing options for being a poison build, right, is sheer endless, right? So for map showcase, so basically back to the gear, I'm using a Beano's Kitchen Knife, so I have the poison proliferation that I would usually have as the Pathfinder, as the Ascendancy, but it only accounts for attacks. And with this one, I can actually poison proliferate as a Blade Vortex spellcaster in this regard, right? The rest of the gear, I mean, the gems are all like level 19. There is no Awakened gems, no nothing, no Helm enchantment, not even an anointment. There is Dirty Techniques, I don't even know. I just bought this, so it is actually not even bad here with the damage over time multiplier. So this is not even bad. I would probably either go Dirty Techniques or actually, for example, Corruption, or even something tankiness, like, I don't know, like, there is a lot of sources, right? So, basically, let's just jump into, I would say, let's go at Toxic Sewer, because I like this map, and then we do, like, a beach map, for example. So, the thing is, this is my potential league starter, right? Gearing choice, as I said, nothing too crazy over here, right? And you're not allowed to forget that this is now an Awakener 8, so this is not really league starter. So, if you say you're farming Awakener 8, League Start is probably already gone. What are the mods here? I just want to check that there is no modifier which says, like, enemies have chance to avoid poison or something, right? This would potentially make my build way worse than it actually is. So, for the playstyle, we have Blade Vortex as usual with Unleash support, so we have like 3 of those. You can basically spec into, for example, Light Eater, I think? No, Thunderous Salvos with we have 1 max number of seal. You can use it on the helm if you take a rare crafted helm, for example, but I think it's not really necessary at all. And I did not play with increased skill effect duration. That was the last part I was doing. So this character is currently level 92. I leveled this one up today. I currently have like 8 hours, 53 minutes playtime. And yeah, I mean, 8 hours, 92. Guess I ran a couple Breachstones, right? But yeah, you just basically run around. Plague Bearer basically is, as always, like your main carry of damage. So Blade Vortex doesn't feel that insane yet based on my weapon choices. For example, if you would take... let me quickly get the volume a little bit down. So... not that we have the reverb. So usually you would take some kind of cold iron point dagger, or what is it called, to have like insane amounts of damage based on the scaling of your Blade Vortex, right? So if you're wondering, Pathfinder Pestilence Strike versus the Assassin Blade Vortex Poison, right? So, I gotta admit, this is the first poison build that I'm playing as an assassin, okay? So, usually every poison build that I played is played as a Pathfinder, because I just love the poison proliferation and that kind of stuff. And the Minos Kitchen Knife does kind of the same, it's just a super bad weapon, right? So, for example, if you would take the Cold Iron Point Dagger, it gives 3 levels to all physical skill gems, and Blade Vortex is a physical skill gem. So, if you would just, like, dual wield 2 Cold Iron Point Daggers, you get +6 levels to your Blade Vortex, and since Blade Vortex is a spell, you get shit tons of damage based on that, and that basically higher your poison damage because your initial damage is higher and stuff like that, right? So... I would personally say, like, Pathfinder is super depending on your weapon, right? It's an attack-based build, so obviously the weapon choice or the weapon that you have is going to be mandatory, right? So if you have like a 200 DPS poison weapon or something like that, right? Your damage will suck just because your weapon is that bad, right? For Blade Vortex, for being a spell, it doesn't really matter too much. So we're comparing, like, let's say a level 19 Blade Vortex to a level 25, which is obviously, since it's a spell, it scales hilarious with the base levels. So it is way easier to scale a spellcaster than it is to scale a melee character. So I would say, overall, I mean, I have not tested the Blade Vortex basically as a league starter, right? But you see how fast it is with the self-poison, with the chill and so on, reverse chill. You're just like so speedy, and I did not even focus on damage at all on this build. You're gonna see it later on in the skill tree that I didn't even invest anything. So, and for the boss, like, they are down your totems, get your Plague Bearer down, and then basically enemies poison will just die, and that's it. That was like 2-tier 15 or 16 maps on Awakener 8 without any problems with, I would say, budget gear for myself. You can make the decision up yourself if this is budget or not. Good. So, since I can now finally focus on what I'm actually saying here or talking, so as I said, I would personally assume that the Blade Vortex Poison Assassin as a spellcaster is way more efficient as a league starter than it is with the Pestilence Strike, just because of the gearing potential in the lower end and on the higher end. I think with attack-based builds, you are kind of limited at some point, and with a build like that, you have like endless scaling options, right? And this is why Poison makes it that interesting. in overall, right? Because poison is not like bleed where you're like capped on poison stacks, right? Like bleeding, you can have 1 bleed, or you can like go with Crimson Dance and you have like 8 bleeds or 9 bleeds, and then there's like other options where you can like, I think 9 bleeds is the maximum with these Vesture gloves or so, which are not even good, but anyways. But poison scales endlessly. There is no cap for poison, right? The only cap there is on yourself, but this is basically based on the golden rule, that it only says like poisons you inflict is reflected to you if you have fewer than 100 poisons. So as soon as you hit 100 poison, you cannot get more. But on the enemy, it's just based on your attack / cast speed and your poison duration, right? The longer your poisons last, the more poison stacks you can get, as well as the higher attack speed or cast speed that you have. But it is important to know that a lot of people are cheating poison DPS, right? So if I would say this is my current path of building of this character, right? Like 3 million Shaper DPS or Cyrus DPS, which is quite super good for a League starter build, I would say. Shouldn't be any problems to do any kind of Guardians or Cyrus at all. And basically you can say, how many poisons does the enemy have? I choose 25 because I say like, okay, I have 7.5 hit rate. If I would stay there like 3 seconds and kill or at least have the enemy in my Blade Vortex for like 3 seconds, I feel comfortable getting 25 poison stacks. It should probably be more, but some people are like, ooh, the boss has definitely 500 poison stacks, right? And wait, God. Poisons applied recently. Let's say like, hey, I've made like 500 poison. I have 22 million. Oh wait, I have actually 1,000 poisons on the target. Like, oh, I have 41 million. Ooh, my skitter bots shock for like 100% because they don't know better. Oh, I have close to 50 million DPS, right? So, as well as I'm getting the poison duration higher. So basically, you have to check like on your calculation tab, and then you have like here Blade Vortex somewhere. Blade Vortex over here with the normal Blade Vortex. So what is important is basically, where is it, the poison duration. So here it is 96 seconds, right? Sounds cool, right? But there is no freaking way that somebody hits his Blade Vortex for 90, this is 1.5 minutes straight on the same target. There is no such encounter, even like, yeah, if you have like 1 DPS on your poison, you probably get up to like your maximum poison stacks on there, right? But it's just like on the assassin, it is always like, how many poison did you apply it recently? I think, where is it? Where is it? There was a note. 5% increased poison duration for each poison you have inflicted recently. Recently is always the past 4 seconds, right? So if people do like this and say like, hey, I have 1,000 poison stacks, but is not even accurate, right? Obviously, your poison duration will be quite endlessly, right? And this is why you get such insane DPS numbers based on how many poisons you applied, which is complete bullshit, you know? So I would say a good poison should be around like 5 seconds, I would say. A poison duration with 5 seconds. Like, how often can you free hit a target for 5 seconds, right? It's not going to happen often. Maybe on Owl or maybe on Saurus, if your DPS is quite low, you probably have the option to stick on the target for more than 5 seconds, but usually there is no scenario like that, right? So that's why people love to go Assassin and just go like Unbound Ailments and everything that gives you poison duration, which is actually just stupid because there is not realistic DPS, right? So now my poison duration is 7.62, which is still high, but I would say this is okay. So as long as it's like below 10 seconds, like 7 seconds is in my opinion already too high. But that's why I say like damage on a poison build is always like relative, because you can basically simply cheat the DPS, right? Good. Let's start from first the explaining of the build, how I would approach this one. So I choose to go with the Beano's Kitchen Knife just because of the poison proliferation, just because it is faster in mapping, and I like speed mapping, especially on League Start where 90% of the day you're just gonna map, or at least I will. So it's not only about like boss killing and stuff that will come like once League Start is over, once you have your Cyruses killed and stuff like that. Then you can more look towards swapping that one out for Cyrus 4 and Cold Iron Point Dagger, which will increase your DPS by quite a lot, right? But for the mapping aspect, Beano's Kitchen Knife, I think even that Beano's Kitchen Knife is fair enough, like this kind of gear to do all content. fairly safe, okay? I mean, 3 million DPS as a poison build is not a lot. There is easily ways to get this to up like 15 million or so if you sacrifice quite some DPS. And based on my skill tree, if you see here, there is not a lot of poison nodes that I took, right? We have here Toxic Strikes, those two for the generic poison damage here. We have the Fatal Toxins, and yeah, and here Growth and Decay. That's pretty much it, right? So there is more poison nodes over here. There is over here on the bottom side, there is poison nodes, there is poison nodes. A lot of those are attack poison nodes, though, right? So that will not count for Blade Vortex. But there is like Serpentine Spell Stinger, which is for poison spells. Then you have here the Dire Torment for the Assassin with the poison. But I choose to go with a straight life build early on because I think damage can come later, and I know that there is like hundreds of ways to apply better poisons or get way more damage for the cost of survivability. And since the current way that I do it with the Icefang Orbit, the Winter Weave and stuff like that, these rings are actually super garbage. They are probably going to be cheap in League Start, that's why I choose to go with those. But any good rare crafted rings will like Life, maybe Vermilion rings, maybe even Influenced later on, you know, will give you so much more DPS and so much more survivability that you'd probably not even need to have that much life over here, right? But there is still good notes for League Start, like resistance-wise, right? Exceptional performance for the increased skill effect duration, more life modifiers. So as long as you can survive, the enemy will die anyways at a certain point, right? The next point I will probably go into Atrophy, which will give me like quite some DPS increase as well, like 600k. And there is like, as I said, so many ways to make this build possible or use it. I'm not even having any kind of cluster jewels in here. No Divine Flash, Glorious Vanity. This is something I would probably apply later on in the stage. So, good. Self-poison. Why do I self-poison? What are the odds for self-poisoning? So basically, first of all, what is needed to make it even work is you need the Malevolence modifier unaffected by poison, while affected by Malevolence with the Watcher's Eye. And then you use a golden rule, which says poisons you inflict is reflected to you, but be careful, bleedings you inflict is also reflected to you, right? That's why I don't think it's a good idea to take dirty techniques. First of all, it's quite a long way if you... It's like multiple ways of scaling that, right? But this way of building, I could actually take it. But the problem is this one. Attacks have chance to cause bleeding and chance to poison. So if I would have this one, it's most likely that I will self-inflict bleeding. At least it was like that since I'm kind of talking about it right now. It was the problem on the attack-based build, right? But there is no spell, I'm just thinking about it, there is no spell that can inflict bleeding, so that wouldn't even be the big problem over here, to be honest. So this would technically work, it's just not a no-go for any kind of melee Pathfinder thing, right? Like Pestilence Strike, Viper Strike, stuff like that. Or even Cobra Lash or things like that. So basically that means you will poison yourself, but this one makes that you get the poison, but not going to be affected by the poison. It means you get no damage, although you are poisoned. So why would you poison yourself? And I choose to go with the APIP Supremacy. It's a very nice item general for this build. It adds flat chaos damage, and we know poison gets killed through the combined physical and chaos damage. So the chaos damage on the shield will benefit my poison damage. We have some energy shield, which is not too mandatory. But since we use Eldritch Battery through the helm, we actually benefit from it, since I can almost permanently cast Blade Vortex without being scared of running out of mana, basically, right? So it's not like completely useless. But then we have 25% chance to be poisoned, which is kind of useless, basically, since we already apply poison through our Blade Vortex, and that gets reflected to us. But the most important thing is 3 to all maximum resistance while poisoned. This is all maximum resistance. This includes all elemental plus chaos resistance. And the next good side effect while self-poison is the golden rule also say that you get 1 chaos resistance per poison on you. And it's not hard to gain 100 poison stacks on yourself. It's like a matter of like 1 or 2 seconds until your poison proliferation goes off and like everything is reflected. So that means you get 100 chaos resistance, and you will cap out on chaos resistance on top of that, plus getting 3% maximum resistance to fire, cold, lightning, and chaos as well. So your chaos res capped as well without investing into chaos resistance at all, because this is something that is very hard to pull off in the League Start if you're not going CI, for example, right? Another cool thing of self-poison is, besides being res capped and get the max resistance and stuff, is the Ice Fang Orbit Winter Weave combo that I used back in the days in 3.8 on my first Pestilence Strike Pathfinder. So how that works is the Ice Fang Orbit says you are chilled when you are poisoned. So since we are self-poisoning, we are self-chilling, right? So the problem is, chill is bad, since chill makes you slower, right? You have like slower movement speed, attack speed, cast speed, like overall action speed is slower. But with the Winter Weave, it says the effect of chill is reversed. So that means we're, instead of getting slower, we're getting faster. And that's why my character has such an insane attack speed, cast speed, movement speed, overall, without even using Cinder Swallow Urn, for example, or anything like that. It is easily going to like over 200% movement speed without a big investment at all, right? And there is more ways to take use out of the chaos, or at least the self-poison. There is, for example, a Sextant modifier, which is getting ridiculous, where you get like movement speed and everything per poison on you, like 5% or so, I don't even know. But if you have this Sextant modifier, every map, you're gonna have 1000% movement speed and insane, ridiculous amounts of cast and attack speed, stuff like that. But I would not count on that too much. I think if you have it, it's nice, but I wouldn't really necessarily focus on it at all. Good. Then for the next thing, the Devouring Diadem. As I said, level of Sacred Gems, Mana Reservation. I choose to go with Malevolence, Skitterbots, Herald of Agony, and Flesh and Stone. You can swap out Skitterbots for Herald of Purity, for example. Not Herald, the Purity of Elements, because you're gonna have a hard time early on in the league getting some good resistance. My rare items are pretty much league starter viable, I would say. There's just like Crafted Life, a bit of resistance, right? The belt has like double resistance life with the crafted resistance. The boots are a little bit more hefty, I would say, because of the Cannot Be Frozen mod. This is an Exalt craft, and not a lot of people will have access to that early on. But the reason for that is usually you would take a freeze immunity flask, right? But the freeze immunity flask will also make you immune to chill, and that would basically counter our self-chill, right? So as soon as I would use that flask, I would not chill myself anymore, and I would not reverse the chill, so my ring combination would be completely useless. So that's why I choose to go with the Cannot Be Frozen, which is not really league starter friendly. I mean, we're gonna go over the gearing options later on anyways, from like how does it look like on day 1, day 2, what should you skill before you go Devouring Diadem, for example, what do you do before you have the Epep Supremacy or the Impresence or the Ice Fang Orbit. Like, as I said, it's like all pro and cons basically, but everything here is can be swapped out without any problems, right? So at some point you're gonna get this item, and then you can start applying your self-poison, for example, because you're not gonna league start with a Watcher's Eye like that anyways, right? Just to make that clear. But it is definitely possible to create this build in the first week of the league. Good, so as I said, some Skitterbots can be replaced with the Purity of Elements, then Herald of Agony and Flesh and Stone. Herald of Agony gives you the chance to poison as well, basically, and as well as the more poison damage. So pretty good combination over there. Flesh and Stone for survivability, because we're permanently using this one in Sandstand, so nearby enemies are blinded. Then through the Impresence, there is like, you can go the Shaper's Presence as well, like the, no, not Shaper's Presence, what is it? The Amulet from Shaper with the Temporal Chains, for example, right? This would also be an option, and if you do so, then you would just swap in a Witchfire Brood, so you get the Despair Curse. So it's like optional. What do you think is better? I think I would like to have both. That means maybe at some point when I swap to a rare chest, for example, or even anoint the Whispers of Doom at some point, I would probably swap out this one to the Temp Chains and Blasphemy or something, and swap out the Skitterbots. So I'm running a dual curse setup, because the Temp Chains will also increase your DPS, because the enemy, like the poisons on the enemy, will last longer because of the Temp Chains, and that basically means that I can have a higher total amount of poison stacks on the enemy just because of the poison duration, right? Then what else to say here? Shield Charge, Fortify, faster attacks. Withering Stab, still something I'm just not a friend anymore. So the main problem, I usually have Withering Stab on my auto walk, so every time I'm just walking around, I proc my Withering Stab. It plays like a ping pong with my ascendancy basically from the Mistwalker, where I get elusive from critical strikes. As soon as it goes to a certain percentage threshold, I can basically just reapply my elusive with a high percentage while just walking around basically, right? But the problem is, every time you're using Withering Step, your dash does not work because they sit on the same cooldown. So basically, as soon as the Withering Step falls off, we get now the global cooldown, and now I could dash once, or as soon as I just manually walk again, I cannot dash anymore, right? So you would need to go like dash with second wind or stuff like that. And this is also one of the main reasons why I like to go with the shield, just because usually you would do like Flame Dash, right? But Flame Dash and Withering Steps doesn't work out great as well. So I had this one like last league on any build, I think on the Herald of Thunder Auto Bomber, for example, where I permanently blocked my my Flame Dash with my Withering Step, right? And at this point, I'm not even sure if I actually want to have Withering Step anymore, because like it is nice, but it just blocks your survivability basically by not being able to dash anymore for like Cyrus Quadra Beam or something like that, right? You want to go over a wall, but you cannot because you have this on cooldown, so you need like to attack, so this goes off, and then you just wait here until you're finally able to dash over it, right? So you could probably solve this with a Leap Slam. I'm not even sure if this works with a dagger. Well, it works with a wand, so probably. I'm not even sure. But I just think the shield charge with 45 gives another layer of defense, and then one dash basically without second wind, without Withering Step, is fair enough to just swap over a wall or something, or any obstacle basically, or just to get safely away from the Quadra Beam or something like that. Other than that, Plague Bearer with Enhance, Empower, and Increased Area of Effect. They're both level 3, obviously, for league start reasons, right? There's no reason to spend like 100 exalts and call it a league start. It is good. Empower, definitely. Enhance gives you more quality, so more area of effect. But I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be the end gem setup that I actually want to use, just because I would like to have, for example, a second wind on my dash, for example, or maybe we're gonna swap out this Spear and Blasphemy for something else. I'm not entirely sure how. It's just a potential league starter, right? This doesn't have to be super min-maxed, because I still need to wait for the announcement of 3.12 with the patch notes. Does this build survive? What I would probably assume, because it's live since quite some time. But there might be some cool new spells that I would like to try out as my league starter, maybe with the release of the patch notes and stuff like that. But that's why I say it's a potential league starter, therefore it doesn't have to be like 100% super min-maxed. But therefore I would probably swap out the Enhance and maybe even the Increased Area of Effect, because I think when using a Carcass check, we do actually have quite some AoE as well. When it comes to Blade Vortex, obviously Val Blade Vortex will boost your DPS insanely, because it will just apply poisons on its own. Then we have Deadly Ailments, Val Toxins, Unbound Ailments, Unleash, and Void Manipulation. Obviously Unleash, because it's one of the only ways why Blade Vortex is enjoyable at all, just because you only have to use your Unleash Blade Vortex like every couple seconds, and the more skill effect duration you have, the better it's going to feel anyways, right? But I think with this cluster here, we're super fine that our Blade Vortex lasts quite decent amount of time, basically. When it comes to cluster jewels, we need to check later on. I think there is only one good cluster jewel node, and this is the one where you get Unholy Might on critical strike. Then I would swap out the Sin's Rebirth, for example, in Seer's Promise, or later on with the Bottled Faith, for example. You know, there's like, as I said, gearing options is like tons, right? Path of Building link is in the description below. As always, let's take a look real quick on the Path of Building. As I said, currently like 3 million DPS, should be fair enough to do all content early on. We have Phase Acro, we should be ailment immune at some point once we take the Arcane Swiftness, Shaper Boots, for example, like I always do with the ailment immunity, crafted ailment immunity on my gloves, and then we should be elemental ailment immune as well. But there might be a problem over here. I think once I'm ailment immune, then I cannot really chill myself anymore. I don't know if it works with Reflected or not. I need to test this one out. But I would say this is like the cheap starter version, and then once we start gearing, and we take rare rings and maybe even a rare amulet with like Chaos.multi plus level of intelligence or dexterity gems, physical spell skill gems and stuff like that, we will not self-poison anymore anyway, so there is no reason to worry about the self-chill anymore, right? Good. Yeah, Path of Building. So what would you do before you have the Devouring Diadem? Basically, you would just skill naturally into Eldritch Battery. Then you can also take, for example, Nimbleness is not too bad, or this one over here. So you can I would actually swap out over here, like something like this. And then you could actually check if you take those notes, if this is enough to skip that one over here. You need to check about the mana reservation. But I would just manually skill over here, even though it costs you some skill points. But you're probably not going to have like 5 exalts or whatever, how much this helm will be early on in the league in 3.12, right? That would basically solve your mana issues, because you're gonna have mana issues anyways. So if you're not having your mana reserve, basically, you just skip out 1 aura. I would say Summon Skitterbots falls off, so you will technically have enough mana with just the Malevolence, Herald of Agony, and Flesh and Stone. And even before that, I would just go with Malevolence and Herald of Agony. Those are your mandatory auras, basically. And once you get more into Mana Reservation or even Eldritch Battery, you can swap out more auras, because you will need quite some mana to be able to cast your Blade Vortex anyways, right? Then for the next part, what if you don't have the Impresence, right? It's basically everything starts with rare items with like life resistance, right? I don't know how much is an Impresence in League Start, because I never purchased it early on. But since it's an Elder drop, I would assume the first ones will be available in like day 2, maybe on the league. They might start on an Exalt or maybe 2 or so, I don't know, but usually they should start dropping fairly fast, and once you have more currency, you should be able to afford one. Before that point, you can actually even check the prices of the Shaper Amulet, you know what I mean, with the temp chains, right? So you can basically swap this left and right and just get a Witchfire Brew, as I mentioned before. Shouldn't be any problem getting just any kind of rare amulet at all, right? Still a little bit of a cold. Boots, as I just said before, with the life, movement speed, whatever. What else? The APEP Supremacy should be around 1 Exalt. It is a fated unique, because usually is the APEP Slumber, I think. So you need to check if you can upgrade yourself and save yourself some currency. Before that, any kind of rare shield, life resistance should do the job. And then you just start to get more and more stuff into your build, right? I would say Corralitas is important, although we do scale into Perfect Agony, because we're not a Pathfinder, means we're not going to have 100% uptime on bosses anyways. But Corralitas itself gives you 75% increased duration of poisons. That means more poison duration, higher poison overall damage, basically combined, fully stacked, whatever you call it. So that's basically a good DPS flask. Other than that, what else do I need to mention? So this I said with the Eldritch Battery. This can be anything. Oh yeah, the Golden Roll. So no Golden Roll before you don't have the Malevolence, Unaffected by Poison. This should be around 50 Chaos or so. Nobody uses that, you know. I would say this would be one of the Watcher's Eye that you just sell for like, or have for sale for 15 Chaos, but nobody wants to buy it anyways, right? So I don't think getting this Unaffected by Poison should be hard at all. Once you have that, the Golden Roll is not expensive either. But when you self-poison, think about, do you benefit from it? Do you have the ring combination to get this reverse chill, or do you have the shield? Otherwise, forget about the self-poison, right? You can do it basically just to get your chaos resistance from the Golden Roll. But if it's like super necessary, you're gonna make your decision up yourself. But I think this combination should not be expensive and early sustainable. At some point, you're gonna get a Thread of Hope. With before that, you just would like most likely skill on the bottom side over here, right? So we're just gonna go here and spec manually into Swift Venomous. Then we could go over here and just save those 2 points away and replace Heart of Oak, and then manually skill over here, and that's problem solved. As soon as you have that, you can respec some of the points over here, respec those points, win a lot of points based on the travel notes, right? And then spec into more defense or more DPS, however you would like to have it. Good. More DPS over here, for example. This one is not bad either. You have the Serpent Spellslinger here. Then you have like the Dire Torment. There is like so many poison notes. Like getting more damage into this build should absolutely not be a problem. It's more about the survivability, and I would say we probably gonna first fix the survivability, and then we can focus about damage as well. Good. Anything else to note here? Probably not. Let's go over the MTX real quick. The good old poison set that I'm using since quite some time with a necrotic, complete necrotic armor set, necrotic wings, the huntsman dagger with the basilisk weapon effect, necrotic helm, necrotic shield, the Aquila crest helm attachment, pitch black bandana. Then we have necrotic portal effect, the pestilence portal character effect, the necrotic footprints. Based on skill MTX, we have the Bloodguard Herald effect for my Herald of Agony. Then we have the Project Aura effect, the Wither Celestial effect, Pylon of Pain Totem Skin. They actually look disgusting. I like it. And the Angelic Aura effect to make it a little bit more on the yellow-green side of skills. Good. If you have any questions about this build, as I said, once we have the patch notes, once we have the 3.12 announcement, once we have all of that done, if there is interesting skills, I'm going to make an update video anyways, right before the league starts, like 1 day before or so, where I'm going to mention exactly what my league starter is going to be, if it's going to be one of the new skills, or is it going to be the Poison Blade Vortex. As far as I see, I don't see a reason why not to start with this build. It's insanely fast, it's a lot of fun to play, and this is like the most important stuff, right? It can get ridiculously tanky. Once you swap out the rare rings, you can get up to like 7k life or so. Maybe even later with Divine Flesh, you're gonna have like max chaos resistance on top of that. Headhunter viable, like all the good stuff. Good single target, good clearing. Like, this build just offers everything, same as the Essence Drain, same as the Bleed Bow, so I don't see any reason why it would be a bad idea to start with this build. And as I said, if there is no other special things coming out, or this build getting completely destroyed, what I don't think, yeah, then this is probably going to be my league start. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.